Hello Internet and welcome back to our Experimental Cataclysm series. If you don't know, this is the show where we talk about many of the changes that have come to the experimental version of Cataclysm over the last couple of weeks. Generally a bi-weekly show, and we're going to be talking about the updates. My goodness, I have a loud vehicle. Hopefully in the near future I'm getting a new microphone and that will cut out some of this background noise. Anyway, we did do a special episode last week. Normally I do every other week, but I made an episode when nested containers came down because it was a pretty massive change that affected a lot of things in game. So I want to take a moment to talk about the state of that. So Korg merged, or it got merged last week, and the initial reaction that I had on my Let's Play was, oh my god, what happened? Because basically this introduced a whole lot of bugs to the game, and I would love to tell you that they've all been hammered out, but really it's only been like 8 days, and there's only so much that they can do on any given day. I know Korg has been working on fixing the reloading sewing kits, and that sort of thing has been apparently actually a pretty big deal. So, you know, it's going to be a process to get all of these things worked out. So just in my personal experience, we've noticed that cans are spawning as open. I believe that has been fixed, although that will, for the record, only apply to cans and things that are not already generated. Things that were already generated in your game that you updated and then played where they were open, they're not going to magically close on you. So unfortunately for me, for instance, that's not going to fix my problem, but it will work on newly generated things where if you update now, you should not have spawned open. I don't remember who made that fix. I don't think it was in the change logs yet. So that's something I've noticed. Refilling tanks fills your tanks to the maximum for some reason. And just a lot of little stuff is really what it comes down to. Issues reloading. We've had some items duplicating, some items disappearing. We've had some things that have already been changed. So for instance, we talked about the lack of category listings in the inventory menu, and that has been changed. You now use the semicolon key to toggle category mode on and off. So there are changes that are coming. I believe that the game is in a playable state, but I know that a lot of you don't feel that way. So I wanted to just give an update. There's no nice way to say it. They're busted. They broke a lot of things. But I don't think that it's, unplayable. I think there are a lot of issues that can definitely become frustrating. Certainly I've been frustrated. But ultimately I see lots of people working. I think it was Wap Caplet who put in that fix for the cans being opened. I'm not 100%. But there are people who are working on these things, and it is a work in progress. So just, you got to bear with it, or you got to just not update. You can't, I hear people who say like, oh, I don't want to update because it'll break the game, but I want all the new features. Well, that's kind of the point, right? Is that you can't have one or the other. It has to be both. You can't just not update and expect to have all the features. That's not how it works. Additionally, I wanted to take a moment and say, look, there are a lot of bugs out there right now relating to nested containers, and if you're not playing on the current experimental, you can't make bug reports and help them fix the problems. So the more people who play the game and test it, and that's like part of our job as people playing the experimental version of Cataclysm. We're meant to play the game, test it, and then give our feedback about bugs and things like that. So if you're not playing, you're not contributing to the project. So I would encourage you to try, at least on the experimental version of Cataclysm, and just sort of roll with the punches. And then if there are bugs, come on over to the Cataclysm GitHub and see if it's already been reported. And if it hasn't, make a bug report. I hate making bug reports, but I made a bug report because I had an issue that was not reported yet. So okay, 4 minutes we've talked about that. That's enough. I think it's in a playable state. It's definitely annoying, but it's not unplayable. It's not going to destroy your saves or anything like that. So I would encourage you to play on the current experimental. So let's move on here. Now, the first 3 things I want to talk about are things I actually missed in previous episodes. So first up, we have from Night 2 changes. We have the Rat Cave Jason and the FEMA camp being Jasonified or Jasonified. And when I saw these in the changelogs, I actually didn't think they were content, even though they were listed as content. I saw they were being Jasonized, and I just assumed that all they did was port over the existing map gen into JSON form. So for me, it was like, it's cool, but it's not really content. And I was apparently wrong about that, because I took a look at the FEMA camp, and it has nested chunks and things in it, which if you've watched this show for any length of time, you know I really like those. We've talked about nested chunks. Basically, it selects an area, and then you can have multiple different layouts contained in that area. So if we scroll down, let's see if we can find some differences here. So yeah, here it looks like a little temporary FEMA shelter barracks type situation, but up here it's displaying this like dump site, or possibly a mass grave. I can't really tell. Yeah, I don't know what that is. But the point is, it wasn't just moving things from hard-coded to JSON. It was actually adding some nested chunks and stuff like that. So I wanted to shout this out, and I did get called out for this because I had completely missed them. And I think that basically anytime, so I had a discussion with someone on Discord like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. They were talking about caves specifically, and having trying to set up some new cave locations, because if you've ever been to a cave in Cataclysm, they're all pretty basic. There's a high chance that it's going to be the rat cave, and the caves just aren't that impressive, frankly. And they wanted to do work with the caves, but what happened is that actually caves have been hard-coded for a long time, so they were never really able to be modded or adjusted through JSON. That's been changed. Not only was it the rat cave, there was another change that actually JSONized just the cave in general and things like that. And what that means is that people can now add new content to caves, create new layouts for caves, things like that. Again, if you've gone into a cave recently, their layouts are pretty generic. There's not really much special to them except for the rat cave. So this is definitely a cool step, because it's going to enable people to do some more things. I don't really go in the rat cave. I don't like the rat cave. I'm not a fan of mutations, so I think that's probably why I've never been a big fan of this. But yeah, it's been JSONized, so hopefully people will begin generating new content in that regard. And then the FEMA camp, I've never seen in game. I actually thought this was from a mod. I didn't realize that it was a hard-coded FEMA camp, but it's cool to have this in the game. There should be more locations like this, in my opinion. The camp locations, things that are set up as temporary shelters in an emergency situation, stuff like that. I mean, I know with the Cataclysm, I don't think there was a ton of time to react, but you know, we have things like barricades and blockades and stuff like that that obviously indicate some amount of awareness of the apocalypse before it happened. So it makes sense to me that emergency shelters and things like that would be set up. So I love seeing more of this kind of stuff. So pretty cool. And the nested map gen is just like the icing on the cake, because it allows for some variety in what otherwise would be a static and pretty stagnant location. So I wanted to give those two things a shout out. There was much more than that. Like I said, he also JSONized the caves themselves, I believe. If I didn't misread that PR, I don't have the changelogs pulled up here. Good time to mention, I do use the changelogs. I don't really trawl through all the GitHub PRs anymore. You know, I'm sure for someone who has like merge permissions, like I think Knight has merge permissions, obviously would end up reading a lot of PRs. I'm not that. I'm not part of the dev team or anything. I'm just some guy, so like I don't, have time to sift through all the pull requests and stuff. So the change logs are what I go by. So I do miss things sometimes. I do, forget things, like the next thing we're going to talk about, which is a new monster. This is a SWAT zombie. I actually put this in our list of changes last week. If you, when we discussed the bionic monster thing, what are they called? I can't remember. We discussed a different kind of enemy, but I actually forgot to also mention that SWAT zombies were added to the game. That's pretty basic as far as things go. It's basically just a cop zombie that drops SWAT gear. And the argument for this is that we've had SWAT gear, but we didn't actually have SWAT zombies. So I wanted to mention this 2 weeks ago and completely forgot about it. So yeah, making mistakes left and right. Anyway, let's move on to new things. And we're going to go, as always, from kind of smaller changes towards the larger changes. So this PR adds tea bags, herbal tea bags, and adjusts drink recipes. And I just wanted to mention this because tea is delicious, and you should all drink tea because coffee is incredibly overrated, and why would you drink bean water? So yeah, herb tea and regular tea bags have been added to the game, which is good because we've had lots of loose teas. But again, tea has always been a reliable way to up your health in-game, so tea is always desirable in my opinion. Next, we had a PR to audit the pine nuts and remove the recipe. I think this is a great change. Basically, what this has done, after some discussion about the availability of pine nuts in New England, and they used real-world information, and basically the consensus was, I personally believe pine nuts should not be craftable from pine cones. This is how I felt basically from the beginning, because I live in an area where you can't really harvest pine nuts from pine cones from the particular type of pine trees that we have in the area. So for me, this always seemed like a foreign and kind of confusing. I never really understood them. And basically, every time someone brings up food in the Discord or on YouTube, they get 5, 6, 8 comments of people saying, just eat pine nuts, dummy. Like, why would you even go out looting for food when you can just eat pine nuts for the rest of your life? And I just hate min-maxing like that. So for me, this is a perfect change. Not only did it nerf the calorie count of pine nuts down to 101, which is about half of what it was originally, but it also removed the recipe so you can no longer craft them from pine cones. So this is going to affect a lot of you because, like I said, everybody loved it. Just people never shut up about pine nuts. But I like this. It's more realistic. It fits more with the setting, and they used real world values. So obviously, you know, they're drawing a conclusion from actual information. And there's going to be a lot of knee-jerk responses to this, I think, where people are like, I don't care if it's real, that's stupid. And that's going to be that. So wanted to shout this out because I know a lot of you utilize that. Next, from Levian Fiend. Oh, I didn't even look who made that last PR. I like to tell who. Code Bandit. Thank you for nerfing pine nuts. Next, from Levian Fiend. I'm going to assume is how you say your name. I know we've interacted some on Discord, and I never know how to say people's names. Migo, Necromancers, and Masters can now open doors. So previously, if you weren't familiar, zombie scientists had the ability to open doors. This was a holdover from... So like a year ago, zombie scientists had a lot more abilities. A year and a half, 2 years ago, they would do things like throw acid. They would do things like release man hacks or explosive hacks. And it was more or less decided that they shouldn't have these abilities because they're a zombie. They wanted that to... They replaced that functionality with robots, right? We now have a robot that deploys man hacks as opposed to scientist zombies. However, scientists were still able to open doors, which is something I saw pretty recently in my Let's Play. And this has been changed. Zombie scientists should no longer be able to open doors. And now, Migo and Necromancers and Masters can, in fact, open doors. So it has been swapped from the scientists to Migo, Necromancers, and Masters. Migo... I mean, I don't really know what Necromancers and Masters are. They seem to have some kind of supernatural ability to them. So they're obviously some level of intelligent. Migo obviously are intended to be pretty intelligent creatures. And it specifically references somewhere in here that Migo, with the Migo start, they were unable to open doors, so they would end up getting trapped in a lot of places. So that should make that start even more difficult, and Migo a little bit more scary. So I want to point that out. Next, also from Night, the improvised lockpicks have received a tweak. So with the removal of the makeshift crowbar being able to pry open doors and windows, lockpicks are much more go-to now than they were before. And this makes it more difficult to craft makeshift lockpicks, which makes a lot of sense. Primarily, they were made from scrap metal, which I've always pictured as just little chunks of metal, which is not really conducive to making a lockpick. If you were going to do that, you'd have to hammer it out, flatten it out, turn it into more like a wire. And you can Google lockpicks if that's something you're interested in looking up, but it's obviously something that you would expect to be crafted from wire. And there's been a recipe added for a wire-based recipe, but it's also been expanded so that they require more tools, depending on which. I think the wire recipe is much easier to craft, but the standard recipe now has a higher tier tool requirement. So this will make early game lockpicking a lot more difficult. This, of course, works hand in hand with the lockpicking skill that has been added to the game. So, Yeah, definitely something that's going to affect a lot of people. I just wanted to mention it. And again, from wire is the most sensible way to handle this anyway. I don't know how easily, if you handed me a chunk of metal and was like, hey, turn this into a lockpick, I probably couldn't do that, frankly. And I know what lockpicks look like and a vague idea of how to use them. So, like, gotta imagine that would be a difficult thing to do. So, wanted to mention that. Let's move on. Next, from Jeremy, we have lots more books. And I put this in here just because I don't believe we've ever discussed it in this show. So basically, starting, I don't know, probably around the time Ellison released, they started adding more books to the game. We've noticed this in our Let's Plays. We've seen this in other content creators' Let's Plays. It's just a variety of different books. They have different skill levels. Some of them are novels that contribute nothing to your skills or anything. Some of them are skill books. Some of them have recipes, etc. This is part of a larger... One, they're adding more books to the game. Two, they want to rebalance what recipes are auto-learned and which are actually contained in books. They want to spread out the levels of skills among more books, so you can't just grab 2 books and go from level 1 to level 6. They want to expand that a little bit. And this PR is just an example of one of these many PRs that has been coming. So, for instance, we add things like fairy snippets, paperback occult books. Did they add skill books here? The House of God, Catch-22, Master and Margarita. They're satires, of course. Homemaking books in a file called Nonfiction. I would assume homemaking books might be cooking related. Here we have a speech book that's been added to the game. And yeah, I just wanted to point this out because of the larger move to expand books and what their functionality actually is, and again to reassess recipes and things like that. So I wanted to point that out because that's something that's going to be changing and continuing to change. I know in our one playthrough we found one. It's pretty cute. What was it called? Liverlicious Recipes for Kids, I think. And it's just funny to me, trying to get your kids to eat liver. Oh, excuse me, I had a hiccup. Next up, we have some tweaks to scenarios. And I only bring this up because I know a lot of people end up missing the scenarios and don't know where they are. So previously, the fire station and police scenarios were listed as... what were they listed as? I don't remember, actually, now. Whatever, they're now in the surrounded scenario. Because you do start... the fire station starts you with a bunch of firefighter zombies. And the police station, I actually thought was empty, but apparently is surrounded. Either way, you're in the town, so it's going to be surrounded in that sense. And then there was some talk about... Yeah, so previously it was using the prefixes to determine what you could spawn in. This can lead to some problems. I believe this is what caused the silos and animal shelters to be spawned when you use the map looking for like evac shelters and missile silos, if that makes sense, because it worked off of a prefix. I actually might be wrong about that. Regardless, anyway, the point is they removed the ability to spawn on the roof of these locations, I believe is what I read here. And you should now always spawn on the interior, so that should take care of that. Actually, I don't know about the prefixes. Now that I've said that out loud, I actually don't think that was what was causing the problems. Anyway, so I just wanted to give you the heads up that this has been moved to surrounded. Next, we have some farmer NPCs. Oh, wait a minute. I keep screwing this up. That was from Aurajust, made that change. Next, from Lyle SY, we have a farmer NPC. So I haven't seen this in-game. I didn't actually read this PR other than I just wanted to call it out because I literally just saw someone recently say, how come there's no farmer NPC? So I don't know if this is this person that said that or if that's just coincidence. But here you go. You have a farmer NPC. So yeah, and it looks like they're supposed to spawn at a farm, which makes sense. I don't know if farms are treated as safe places or not for NPC purposes. So NPCs, if you don't know, they head towards safe locations. So like they will congregate at cabins or evac shelters, places outside the city mostly, and things like that. So I gotta imagine a farm is probably considered a safe place. So even if he spawns there at the farm, he should probably stay in that area. I don't think he would run away the way, like if we make a cop and we spawn him at the police station, I don't think they're set up to stay in the police station. I think they would go out and seek a safe location. So, yeah, just wanted to shout out the farmer NPC. Next, from Tyresh, we have a makeshift hand drill with drilling quality 1. This is a good change in my opinion. I just complained pretty unrelentingly about this in our Let's Play because what we discovered is that to make the, I believe it was the knife spear, which is supposed to be a very early game flimsy, or no, this was the good knife spear. Still early game, low damage weapon that is meant to be used, a couple days into the game, and the only way you can make it is if you have a drill. And unfortunately, there's no makeshift drill in the game up until now. Unfortunately, there was one in, I believe, the survival tools mod that had a hand drill, and I don't really understand why there was never a hand drill. It's actually a pretty easy thing to make a hand drill. I mean, obviously it's not efficient or anything, but it's not something beyond the capabilities of a survivor, even in the early game. So what this does is add a pretty simple hand drill. What does it require to make? Here we go. Hammering of 2 or more, so your basic hammer that you can make. Fine hammering. Actually, I don't think any of the makeshift hammers have fine hammering, so you might have to get a proper hammer to do this. Requires a pipe, a screwdriver, or nail, and then some wood. Well, I guess a nail. Well, it doesn't matter. So it adds a low tier, yeah, more or less this, only a makeshift version of it. Oh, I see. They drew a little picture. Yeah. So yeah, just a bit that you've hammered into a pipe that you then turn, and it drills. I don't really know why there wasn't one added to the game a long time ago. We have a lot of players who like to play in the woods style, and I know we don't cater to them with development. I know the dev team doesn't make that a priority, but there are people who try to keep it alive so much, so to speak, and it just doesn't make sense to me that there wasn't a manual drill already. The hand drill itself actually requires a forge, which I just did not understand. So it's nice to see a makeshift tool with drilling. So let's move on. Next, from Xander Rootslayer, we have Crude Weapons 2020. It adds 4 new tools, 1 renamed tool, and 4 crafting recipes. Sharpened toothbrush, so a makeshift shank, I guess. It has been changed into a plastic shank. That makes sense. Which is now craftable. Bones can make bone shivs. A whip, which honestly, I would not be using a whip in the zombie apocalypse, but hey, do you, I guess. And a mid-range medieval dagger, the Basilard, both may be crafted. Machete multi-tool, okay. I also saw there was a forge recipe somewhere for the machete multi-tool. I don't know if that was this PR or a different PR, but that should be have a little bit easier time getting that. And I just wanted to shout this out because why not? It seemed cool. I saw a toothbrush listed somewhere and was like, yes, I want a toothbrush weapon, even though it would be garbage. So there you go. Next, from Nasty Nate 2612, we have Extracts and Concentrates Part 3. And so this is Part 3. And I didn't want to really highlight this particular PR. I just wanted to highlight the idea of what is happening here. They're adding basically this adds multiple glassware and things that you would need for chemistry reasons. And it's just been, I don't know if it's a development direction or if it's just something people have been doing, but I've been seeing some pretty major expansion with chemistry stuff over the last couple of, I guess months at this point. It's been months where they've been adding a variety of things. But we've all seen in the labs the new tools and the rubber stoppers and the different flasks and glassware and all that. And to me, it feels like we're moving towards proper chemistry being implemented into the game instead of it just being, oh, you have a cooking skill and you can make mutagen or whatever. So I'm excited anytime I see these things. And I just happened to see there were 2 or 3 of these extracts and concentrates type PRs. And I wanted to give it a shout out because I think progressing towards like proper chemistry should be a goal for the game. I'm sure it probably is in somebody's back burner, but I don't hear the devs really talk about it. And it just is one of those things like we talked about when lockpicking got implemented. I felt like one of the prime candidates for having a new skill is chemistry. And so when I see stuff like this, I feel like that's movement in that direction, and that excites me, and I think that that's really cool. So I don't know that that is the goal behind this so much. I don't know if that really is a development direction, but it's something that interests me. And I wanted to highlight it because I think it's cool. So yeah, I don't have much to say about it. I just wanted to point it out. Next, also from Night, we have searchlights that will now spawn at military and police roadblocks. I believe there were already spotlights at some of these places. They might have had a different name. Maybe it was Searchlights or something like... Oh, it is Searchlights. My mistake. I can't read. We've definitely seen these in-game before. I guess this is just an expansion of the locations where they will spawn. I originally was under the impression that us getting detected by a searchlight, actually the searchlight functioned also as a turret. That does not appear to be true. It appears to literally just be a searchlight. I believe this is a picture of it here. And what this does basically is that in the terrain around it, there will be a light. Like, let's say it's dark outside. There will be a light that kind of pans across the landscape. And I guess the point of them is just to, if they catch you, you're suddenly in an illuminated square and the turret gets to shoot you. I actually thought they were a turret that had a searchlight mounted on them. That, I've been told, is not correct. So it is just a standalone searchlight. But it's definitely cool. It's one of those things that fleshes out the world, right? And I think searchlights are cool because it gives you that, like, if you're driving in the darkness, I mean, they're a little erratic, so it's kind of hard to, like, I mean, I guess I haven't had a lot of experience with them. It could have just been one bad experience. So I don't want to talk about, like, strategy and avoidance and what their AI detection is and that kind of stuff. Because, like, I remember it being pretty erratic. I don't know if that is actually true or not, or if I'm misremembering. But it's cool because it gives you something to avoid, right? As you're just driving through. You really don't want to drive through the searchlight and have your turrets start popping off. Now, since these are primarily the non-lethal or less lethal turrets, getting tagged once or twice is not a big deal. But I would not, especially if you're driving, because the stun effect doesn't affect you. But this also appears to be a turret. I actually can't see what that is. But there are still definitely some blockades that have some scary turret stuff going on. And I would rather not get caught out. If this is added to military... Oh, it's just roadblocks. I was going to say if it's at the bases as well, getting caught, with a lethal turret. There goes the fire siren. So I guess we're going to take a break for 15 minutes. So, these are cool. It's nice to see them added to more locations, and you're definitely going to start noticing them. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. That is the downfall of living down the street from the fire department and medical center and etc. And we had firefighters in the family, so we still listened to the scanners, and all I heard was full involvement, which I believe means that the home or whatever is being completely consumed by fire, and that's it. Like, it's not recoverable. So, I don't know, a fleet of fire trucks. Anyway, that's very depressing. Let's move on. Someone just lost their livelihood and home, so that's terrible. Anyway, next, from Alex Mooney. Sorry to drag you down, Alex. Add small consumer battery rechargers. So basically, in the game, there are two rechargers. Previously, there were the hand crank, which was... It was the emergency option. It wasn't really viable for recharging really any kind of battery at all. The power that it gave was so negligible that it took you a very long time to recharge anything, which is how it should be, right? If you were trying to hand crank a welder back to full power, that's a bit ridiculous. So you had that, and then you had the full-on vehicle recharger. And what that did was really it just powers it pumps tons of charge into batteries. I think they said the charge on the recharger is 600 watt. I actually don't remember where I read that. That might not be correct. But anyway, this adds kind of an intermediate charger. I'm not really sure how they work. I believe it is a vehicle part. But this is a medium charger. It's not a full-on recharger. Let's take a look at a small disc that recharges batteries placed on top of it. It can be easily wired into a vehicle with power. Slowly recharge all rechargeable batteries placed directly in its storage space. Can only be installed into existing storage compartments. So it functions the same as the vehicle charging station, which is, so basically you take a storage item, a trunk, a cargo space, etc., and on top of that tile you will install the recharger. These are going to be found in basic, the single-use storage, or specific use storage, I believe is what it stands for, drawers and things that we've been seeing. So if you've been in houses and you've seen like the knife drawer or the junk drawer with the batteries and the long string, etc., this will appear in those locations, and it is I'm guessing just an easier to install charger. It requires Mechanics 1, and yeah, Mechanics 1. So pretty straightforward, and all it requires, I guess, is a screwdriving tool, and it only takes 5 minutes. So this is pretty great, because previously recharging batteries required either hand cranking, which was not feasible, finding a vehicle with one already installed, which is much more common these days, but still can be a little bit tricky, or installing it yourself, which requires, I think, Mechanics 4, and making one required like Electronics 6, so it was not the easiest thing to do. Those are just off the top of my head. Those numbers could be completely wrong. But this is a medium charger that you can use. I'm not sure what the charge rate is. If we go back to the PR, we take a look at... Nope, that is the wrong button. If we take a look at the main thing, 15 watts to batteries in the same tile it's installed on. So much, much slower. Here it says, okay, spawn to verify. Proper recharging station is 600 watts charge. So this is 15. This is considerably less, but it's also what you would expect from a wireless recharger. So it's not really, these things exist in real life. There was a picture down below, literally just a thing you set your phone on and it charges your battery. Obviously not intended for recharging something the size of a car battery, like what we would put in our welders and things like that. It's going to take some time. That said, the recharging station is already incredibly fast. So even with 15 watts, you walk away for a little while, your batteries are going to be charged. It's not that big of a deal. So this is going to make recharging batteries just crazy easier. And I think that this is going to be something people are really going to like. So, which is fine, because if you think about it, most everything in the world currently in real life runs on USB power, right? You can recharge just about any device in your home using a USB, assuming it's not a device that actually requires being plugged into an outlet. So something like a cell phone, like literally right now, I have my cell phone plugged into a USB to micro USB, and that's it. That's 90% of devices that you can hold in your hands can function on things like this. Now, what I would like to see is only being able to charge smaller batteries, because it's not designed for larger batteries. I didn't see anything about that. To my understanding, based on the coding, it would just recharge anything that's put in it. But I would like to see this apply only to light and ultralight batteries would be my preference. But I do think this is a cool change. I think this is something people are really going to like. So I wanted to shout that out, because I know if people aren't aware of it, they're going to continue to be frustrated by the fact that they can't get a recharging station set up. So pretty cool. Definitely one of the better things to mention this week. Then from Candleberry, John, we have the double level micro lab. So I didn't really look at this PR, I'll be honest, because I've never seen the Subway labs yet. I think I've been in one time, and I didn't really want spoilery type stuff. But to my understanding, basically what this does is add another level to the micro lab, which is what it's called, the micro lab. So as far as I know, it's just another Z level of the micro lab. Previously, this is a lab. If you don't know, it's that densely packed lab that's just one section. There's no upstairs, downstairs, anything like that. So from my understanding, it adds another level to this. I could be wrong about that. Again, I honestly did not look at this PR because I'm a little wary of spoiler stuff. It also talked about moving their Z level. I'm not sure what that means. I'll be honest, I didn't spend time looking at this. I just don't know the labs well enough to recognize changes. So unfortunately, maybe shouldn't have added this to this list at all. You'll have to check out the PR if that's something that interests you. Unfortunately, I just don't know. So probably should have done more research about this. But yeah, with my lack of knowledge regarding the location, it's hard for me to really understand what changed and what didn't. Based on the description, I guess we could read this. It's a test piece for how bigger tileable lab play These new labs include several map gen pieces meant to make lab navigation easier and to segment them better. The -2 subway level is getting a bit saturated with labs, and the connective nature of these labs allow me to move most of them to -4 and to make that level slightly more accessible. Yeah, I have no idea what that means. Sorry, Internet. So does that mean you moved them from -2 to -4? Do subways... I didn't even know subways went that deep. I guess I just don't know. So, again, apologies. I didn't actually... I feel embarrassed now that I don't actually know anything about this. You can check the description down below for the link to this PR. If you understand what's going on, you can, of course, check it out yourself. That's a terrible one to end on. Anyway, so let's call this an episode. So sorry for that. I feel embarrassed. Crap, I forgot something. So, Korg actually posted a... developer blog on YouTube. I will try to provide the link to that in the description down below. And he just talks about some of the work that he's been doing. I know a lot of people, you don't really interact with the dev team very much. You know, we see them on Discord. Maybe we pick up a little bit of what they're working on. We see the changelogs, but we don't really know the details of what they're doing. So I saw Korg posted a video. Did pretty well from what I saw. A couple hundred views, which is nothing to sneeze at. I'm going to link that in the description down below, so go ahead and check that out. Can't believe I forgot to mention that. I was going to make a priority to mention that at the very beginning and forgot all about it. So, sorry it came so late. The end of this episode has just not gone well. Check the link in the description down below. Go ahead and watch the video. He has everything time-stamped. You can check out what he's been working on, where his priorities are right now, things like that. Thought that was pretty cool. So, yeah. Oh, and also, since I'm shouting out the community, we're going to shout out Mom Bun, also known as Positronic Girl, I believe on Reddit, for taking over some of the changelog stuff, formatting the changelogs. Looks great. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out. I will try to link that as well in the description down below. But I do tend to forget those things. I can drum that up as well. So, the community's doing pretty great. And especially since we have now swapped Discords, I find everyone so much more pleasant to deal with, frankly, because it's mostly just people who are actually part of the community instead of people who just come in to troll and whatnot. So, yeah, hooray. Okay, so that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for bearing with me as I forget and mess things up. And I, of course, will be back in a couple weeks with a new episode. Stay safe out there. I know we're all under the effects of the big old quarantine. And remember, it's too soon to open up no matter what your legislators say. And that's going to do it. So thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Wash your hands. And remember that you are loved. So that's going to do it. See you next time.